I'm Tass Mellis of The Starters.
This is Ben Golliver with the Open Floor Podcast.
Hi, I'm Kristen Ludlow from NBA Inside Stuff.
I'm OG Anunoby of the Toronto Raptors.
Hey, I'm Elena Donan, and welcome to the Double Clutch.
Double Clutch.
Double Clutch. Double Clutch.
Double Clutch Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, basketball fans, non-binary basketball fans of all ages, races, sexes, genders, and all that jazz. Welcome to Double Clutch with me, Huw Hopkins. And this week, we will be doing a BBL special. That's a British Basketball League for some of those international fans that might be tuning in this week. We're going to be focusing on our homegrown products because, you know, we've got to look after our guys. We've got to look, and girls as well. So we're going to be focusing on the men's British Basketball League and the women's British Basketball League. And here to do that with us is the head of comms, the lady in charge of everything that you see coming out of the BBL, and that is Selina Conroy. Hello, Selina. How are you?
Hi, Hugh. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm so pleased that you're able to join us. It feels like we've been chatting for a long time now, and kicking back ideas back and forth, and we've published a few things together. But it's great to finally get you on Double Clutch Podcast, so the whole world can learn about you and your pub quiz stylings. I'm looking forward to this one. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. We're in the throes of pre-season prep at the moment. So this is bizarrely one of the busiest times of. Well, it's not bizarre at all. It's one of the busy times of year for us. It's all go at the moment.
I can imagine. Yeah, when everybody else sort of stops for, everyone, all the viewers think. These basketball leagues stop during the off season. It's completely the opposite for the people who are actually in there running the show. It might all be calm on the water, but your legs are like duck's legs going on underneath, trying to keep everything afloat and keep everything going.
Yeah, there's a lot of. We do get time off. Don't get me wrong. They do allow us out, but it's a lot of planning. A lot of prep and sort of reviewing what happened the year before as well, and obviously last season was an exceptional one for many reasons. Just a lot of reviewing, a lot of planning, a lot of prepping, all the behind the scenes bit that people don't necessarily think about, but it has to happen.
Well, we're going to get into all of that in the next hour or so, and I'm sure we're going to have a couple of questions in from our chat as well. But we got to say a big hello to our producer, the man running the scenes, just behind everything that is going on at the moment, the man in charge of the screen. Say hello, Kirk.
Hello.
Short and sweet this time. Thank you, Kirk. So we're gonna jump into around the association. It's gonna be a little bit of a different around the association because it's gonna be less NBA and WNBA this week. But let's do it. Let's drop that intro, Kirk. This is Around the Association. And as I said, Around the Association this week is going to be completely off-piece. We're going to ignore the WNBA, even though that's still ticking along at the moment. And we're going to, and the fact that the WNBA has just dropped the 25 best players to celebrate its 25th season. We're not even going to mention that, even though I've already mentioned it. What we are going to do is look at the fact that the BBL we're now in the month of September, and the BBL and the WBBL is essentially about 3 weeks away from tipping off. We're going to see both leagues have their first games on the 24th and the 25th of September to start their cup campaigns. And it's going to be a pretty exciting season because, of course, we haven't had fans in for quite a long time now, for an entire season last year, and the season before that got cut short slightly. So we're going to be sort of getting fans back in arenas. We're going to be starting with several new teams in both leagues, which is kind of exciting. And we're going to see some returning teams for some leagues. And I'm really pumped for this because we've also got the London sides, the London Lions in both men's and women's. They are going to Europe. They've had a couple of warm-up games in the past couple of days now. And we're going to get into all of that, but we've seen some revamped rosters because of this. So I'm really excited to sort of do a bit of a season preview. It's not going to be a whole one because we are going to do, I think, a bit more coverage of the BBL on Double Clutch in the next few weeks to go more in depth. But what we are going to do is get a bit of a teaser today, and we're going to jump straight into the zone with Selina Conroy. So bring us back into the main screen, if you will, Kirk. So thank you for that. But before we get too much into basketball, some people, I mean, you know, if they are BBL fans, they probably will be aware of you and your name and the fact that you've been on the BBL Show podcast and that sort of things. But for those, you know, we've got quite a few people who are fans of Double Clutch and read Double Clutch who are more, you know, NBA fans and WNBA fans, and they haven't focused as much on the British basketball product. So before we get into the basketball bit, who are you? Who's Selina Conroy? Tell us all about you, and how did you get into into being the queen of comms at the BBL?
So I've been doing this kind of thing for many years. I actually trained as a journalist way back in the day, and moved into doing sort of comms and marketing as tends to happen when newsrooms get rid of all their staff. So I've specialised in working in digital mainly for the past 10 years or so, and I was actually working for a digital agency, and I was looking after luxury travel clients, art clients.
Very nice.
So, you know, quite nice, and
you gave all that up to join British
and
basketball.
then I gave all that up to leave British basketball. But the thing was, in one of my previous lives, when I was working at a company that's involved with the Leicester Riders, and I took my kids along, and I'd been a massive NBA fan back in the 90s, like when anyone who was a teenager in the 90s was an NBA fan. Like if you sat on the alternative side of the classroom, which I did, then you were an NBA fan, right? But as sort of like the coverage over here died a bit, so, you know, kind of drifted away from it. And then, as I say, sort of like came back to it through the job I had. Took my kids along to a couple of games. They really loved it, and I was like, actually, this is a really great thing. Why don't more people know about it? And then I saw the job, and I was like, yeah, I could be that person. I could be that person to tell people about it. So, yeah. And then 18 months later, here I am.
So when you started then, because I remember speaking to you when you first started, and actually it was really exciting. You know, I think it was like, you know, the start of a new calendar year. It was like, this is amazing. We've got this brand new comms expert, which I think we hadn't had for a little while. You know, there have been certainly a few months between people, and not just that. You know, I think the British not trying to dismiss the good work the people did before you, but I think people were a bit worried that, you know, British basketball wasn't doing as much as it could have done, you know, and to market itself. So I thought, this is fantastic. We've got this comms expert coming in, and then the world stopped. You didn't even have time to get your feet under the desk, really, did you?
I had 6 weeks. I think it was about 6 weeks of normal time. So obviously I was still, you know, I couldn't even find my feet because we were building up for the trophy final. So I sort of I joined at the start of February last year, and so everything was gearing up to towards the trophy final, and then this rumbling of sort of pandemic building in the background, and that trophy final weekend, I think we were the last or one of the last indoor events to take place, and yeah, we got through it, and yes, and so I've never had what anyone could consider a normal season.
No.
Because obviously last year, well, first of all, we didn't know if we were going to have a season for quite a while. We managed it. I mean, one of the nice things about it was that it gave me, and that start when we started talking, is that sort of that summer period where I could just go and talk to people, find out as much as I could from the people involved about, what made them tick, what did they want to see, what drove them to it. And what I found was like one of the warmest, nicest communities ever. Like it was really incredible how welcoming everyone was. And yeah, it's if I stop to think about it, it's too much.
Oh, that's really sweet to hear, because like I think I think in many respects you are right. The British basketball community, I think it's a lot like when everyone thinks of a basketball community, especially on Twitter or on social media, they immediately think of the NBA, the MNBA, which is obviously understandable because that's the biggest league in the world.
Yeah.
But I think what people in these sort of more niche communities, so I see it in the WNBA, which is a bit of a smaller fraction than the MNBA, and of course when you bring it over here, that's an even smaller. It's an even smaller pond, as it were. So actually, you can get to know everyone in it pretty quickly. There is, obviously, there's a bit of a difference in the sort of quality of the product compared to the MNBA and the WNBA. But I think there is a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of warmth. That being said, there's also these historical rivalries issues, where you get your basketball Englands and your basketball Wales and your basketball Scotlands and also British basketball, or GB basketball as it's known now, and of course that's not even mentioning like the NBL and all that sort of stuff, and then they all sort of clash heads, and you never really know who's right and who's wrong, and you get people saying, well, I'm going to start up a new league because all of this is it's all silly stuff, so I want to start afresh, but then that never gets off the ground. We've seen this time and time again, and I think last year there was a lot of feeling during that pandemic period where it was like, okay, so can all of this reset a little bit? Can we sort of, like you said, can you go out and meet people, and can you listen to the audience and stuff? And when you were talking to people, what did you find that people wanted from British basketball?
Do you know what? I think you've kind of hit it. They want that cohesion, sort of throughout the various organisations, and it's. I don't think I'd be out of turn to say that it's something that we can definitely work on. I think it's the sort of a grassroots level. Everybody is working towards a common goal. We want more kids to play basketball. We want people to enjoy it. We want it to be a more well-known sport here, and not just a sport, like an activity, a community. It's that whole thing. So yeah, I think there's a lot of frustration at how things are organised, and a lot of that is legacy stuff that would take an awful amount of unpicking. but I think there is a general will to sort of really sort of push forward as much as we can, and together, not each off doing our own various things. So.
Yeah, it's difficult. Having worked in sort of not dissimilar roles to not necessarily the same role to yourself, but in other niche industries, you know, building those bridges with rival organizations. And I mean, are they even rivals? No, they're not really, because nobody else is a franchise-based system like the BBL is. So if you are listening and you don't fully understand what the BBL is or the WBBL, it's a private organization of several companies, which are the teams. So you own a team and you sort of buy into this this overall organization, the British Basketball League or the Women's British Basketball League. I think in both leagues you pay a sort of franchisee tag, but I'm not sure how different that is within the Women's Basketball League, because it's it's not as big, it's not as I don't think. I'm going off the top of my head now. This is pure speculation, so feel free to disagree or not agree if I'm, or just say no comment if I'm not allowed to know these things. But there's, because it's a much smaller audience publicly. I don't think you need to have the same level of detail in terms of your business plan to think long term like you do for the Men's British Basketball League, because there's a bit more money in it, which isn't right necessarily, but unfortunately we need to build our audience a bit more on the women's side. But I think we've seen some teams sort of rise and fall with that franchisee system, and this year we've seen it on the men's side and the women's side. So when everything shut down last year, I think it was on the women's side, I think it was the Sheffield Hatters that stepped away for a season. Yeah. There was lots of public funding attempts and campaigns, and a lot of teams did this actually, especially on the women's side, because like I said, they don't have the private or sponsorship backing like the men do. And we actually saw, for completely different reasons, the Plymouth Raiders, which I am particularly sad about this, because I went to Marjon University, which was a sponsor of the Plymouth Raiders, and I grew up sort of watching them, and for several reasons I had sort of emotional attachment to them. They couldn't agree terms with the Plymouth Pavilions, which is the site that hosted them, and sort of 11th hour, one of the previous sponsors of the Plymouth Raiders essentially said, well, Carl Heslop, thank you, essentially stepped in last minute and said, well, I still want there to be basketball in Plymouth. Not really sure how it all worked out. Hopefully I'll get a chance to speak to Carl in the not too distant future, and I'll be able to share some of that information with Double Clutch. But essentially they've secured I think a 1-year deal with the Plymouth Pavilions to keep basketball there, and then they're going to search for other options. So there has been some people coming in and people going out on the women's side. We've got the Gloucester Queens starting this season, and then hopefully the Gloucester Kings, their men's side, is going to start next year or in the next few years. So how do you then, as the person in charge of all the comms and marketing it, if teams are folding, if teams are moving, if teams are changing, how do you sort of keep that interaction with these communities and with the cities that they are based in, but also a more national audience who don't understand the ins and outs of why one team is there 1 year and not there the next year?
So it was interesting with Plymouth, because their fan base is the basketball fan base in Plymouth is one of the most dedicated in the league. No question. I was pleasantly surprised by how passionate they were, and so when obviously the previous owners of the Clemens Razors franchise said that they couldn't continue, and there were lots of talks going on to bringing new owners for the franchise, which luckily we managed to do with Carl. Transferring them to a new team it's in one way it is a challenge, because obviously they're really hurt because the team that they knew has gone, and it's been replaced, so like a new name, new branding. It'd be like if someone came in and bought the owners of Man United or whatever decided that they were going to pull out, and someone came in new and bought them and decided they were going to call them something else. But
I can't remember
it's that kind of.
I can't remember. I mean, I'm not a big football person, but there was a team. Was it the Milton Keynes Dons or something like that? Ended up moving from another place because private owners just moved.
Yeah. So that was really interesting. So the MK Dons were Wimbledon. So the Wimbledon football team, and moved to Milton Keynes, and so there was actually a new club for Wimbledon that came up in their place. So to kind of, because everyone was like, you can't just move a team, but in the sort of sense of people in Plymouth being so passionate about basketball, they've, and to be fair to the organisation, they've kept, they've tried to keep it as seamless as possible. There had to be a change of brand. That was just a thing that had to happen. But in terms of having Coach James still there, obviously some of the players that they've announced are familiar faces. At the heart of it, the ethos and everything is still there and still the same. So I think once people start getting used to it, and then they can actually go this year as well and experience game day, and having that as well will make a difference. In terms of like a national level where people don't necessarily understand, in a way, I probably shouldn't say this as a common person, but in a way it was kind of good, because things like that are they're always difficult. It doesn't matter what sport you're in. Anything like that is difficult, but it means that it's this season where we're hopefully able to reach newer audiences, that there won't be that confusion for them. But
yeah, I think like you said, and I to be fair, I think the team at the Patriots, from their social media, I think they've done a pretty good job at sort of putting themselves out there. The branding, I think, looks absolutely fantastic. Being, like you said, the Raiders fans, they're very passionate, and a big part of me is going to miss the Fox running around on the side of the court, but it looks great. I love the colors. I love the logo, and it's a cool name as well. I think Patriots is, you think of New England Patriots, you think of you think of excellence in the sport. So it's good to see. So when, for the league more generally, then I'm going to sort of tie this into one of our regular listeners, Matt Hardy, who runs UK Nets Fans. He's a big NBA fan and a WNBA fan, to be fair. But he's submitted a lot of questions because he's looking for a BBL team and a WBBL team to get behind in the next few years. He's sort of slightly newer to following British basketball. And he was wondering, sort of like, what is there? I'm sure this is something that you've received a lot, especially in it's going to be difficult for you to answer because it's only been 18 months. But is there much chance of a sort of weekly televisual production in terms of like a match of the day type of thing? So it's more of a, now part of me thinks this would be terrible idea in the modern age, because what new fan is going to sit down in front of a TV for an hour and watch things that have already happened throughout the week? This modern day, we just want, this is what happened 10 minutes ago in the game that you could be watching right now. Oh, this is what happened last night while you were asleep. That's the type of mentality that we have today. So I'm not sure necessarily a match of the day type of show would work. But that being said, you've had some pretty good success working with Buzz and working with Sky Sports, producing television content. So is there much room for that, where people can tune into the storylines and learn a bit more on social media, on video, on television in some way?
There's certainly the ambition for television. I can't speak too much to that at the moment, but certainly you will hopefully see. So my plan for this season is to tell those stories more. Obviously last season was a little more difficult, but the stories are there. Like there are club rivalries, there's player rivalries, there's players that get on really well, there's ones that are always going to be up for a little bit of a rumble. There's all kinds of, people are fighting for playoff positions. We've got the cup and the trophy to go for, as well as the championship. So there's 4 opportunities for honours. So there's 4 different storylines going on that come into one big storyline, because who's going to be the overall one? So like last year, obviously everyone was really hyped for London Lions, because they had all these big names and everything, and for various reasons their season just didn't quite land the way that that everyone thought that it might at the beginning. And I think that's what makes it exciting. Like last season was one of the most was so competitive. Like you couldn't necessarily tell who was going to win a game. It was one of those seasons. I think this season we'll see a continuation of that, especially looking at how some of the rosters are stacking up, and it's like, okay, I can see where this is all coming in. So yes, I want to tell those stories, and hopefully you will see more of it coming out through the season. Obviously, I'm gonna hype the BBL show, because it is our podcast, and Drew and Jay will do a good job of having that little roundup.
Is Jay allowed to do it this year?
He is, because it's very rare that we do WBBL. So.
Yeah, to be fair, just for the people who are listening who might not know, so Jay Marriott is he's the general manager of the Gloucester City Queens, and soon to be the Gloucester City Kings, who are hopefully joining the BBL in the next few years. And he's taken on coaching duties this year for the Gloucester City Queens. And yeah, last year he presented the BBL show. So I guess, yeah, that's why I'm asking the question if he's allowed to be on the show.
We had Drew Lasker as well, who was a player last year. So we retired this year, so a bit more of a view. So they're committed to being impartial. So yeah, they do a really good roundup. But it's interesting actually that you say, with a match of the day style show. I would love something like that. Like that is absolutely on my roadmap of things that I want to see happen, because it's all very well watching little clips here and there, but if you don't have a context around it, you don't know what you're watching. It's like, okay, cool, that's great dunk or whatever, but if there's no context around it, you can't become invested. And I think that we're sort of trapped between a really quick fix culture and a long read culture. There's no kind of middle ground, which is actually where most of the time you get drawn into things. I can quite happily sit down and watch Match of the Day, for example, and not necessarily have watched any of the games that have happened that weekend. I might know the scores, but I want to have that context around it as well. I want to hear what the pundits are saying. I want to hear what the build-up was. That's what gives it meaning, rather than just a 30-second clip that you saw on Twitter. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. So not to be dismissive of Matt's idea of a Match of the Day program. I think it is important to be able to sit down and contextualize what's going on in the league, in both leagues. I guess it's just there's also some wider things to consider with the British Basketball League and the Women's British Basketball League. At the moment, you've got the BBL player, which I think it had a mixed launch, a mixed review in terms of its launch, because people were confused as to why they could only watch one team for
we got it wrong. We got it wrong.
Yeah,
we absolutely did. We got it wrong. And so that was obviously something that we wanted to sort out very quickly, which I know we did. But we got it wrong to start with.
No. I mean, it's difficult to launch these type of things. I remember having a conversation with you at the time, and we spoke about this and about how it could be improved and why it isn't not that I'm saying you took on my advice. You probably thought all these things before I sort of shared my personal feelings about it, but it seems like hopefully that's sort of working itself out. It was a brand new product. It's going to take time to figure these things out. But also you could see some of the games on Sky, and it seems like at times some teams were putting them on YouTube as well. Certainly, and in terms of the Women's Basketball League, I know you mainly do Men's British Basketball League, but you do have sort of oversight and feed into how the WBBL is promoted as well. It seems like each team is in charge of its own streaming. There's no sort of central point for that. So for the women's game, are there any sort of, I know that your role is primarily, I don't know if you want to give a percentage. I'm going to throw out a percentage saying 75% Men's British Basketball League, but it might be completely different in your mind. But what can we do then to align more of what the WBBL is doing day to day and week to week?
It's really hard because the setup of the WBBL is slightly different to the setup of the Men's BBL. So it because it works in that slightly different way, it brings its own set of different challenges and opportunities as well. So at the moment, it's a case that each of the clubs are responsible for their own streaming now. We can provide some support for them, not too much, but there's some sort of support there in terms of sort of like giving advice or whatever. But there's nothing centrally at the moment. Obviously with Sky, we broadcast the finals, so the WBBL finals alongside the men's finals as well,
which was a really good shout. I think it not only helped share and grow the game, but actually I think, I mean, in my opinion, I felt the Women's British Basketball League playoffs last year was probably more exciting than the men's. Not to do a disservice to the men's, but the women's was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, look, like you had Newcastle like coming in and beating everyone, and like which no one was expecting, and so the journey there was great. Obviously, just fell at the last hurdle. But you know, in what sport are you going to have the men's and women's teams of both? You know, both like competing in the playoff finals. It was crazy. Like,
Yeah.
and if you'd said to anyone at the start of the season that that's what would happen, they'd have laughed at you, because what a nonsense. So I think it's the women's game for me is so exciting, and so there's so much potential for growth there that I get really excited about it. And you know, I see what like the WNBA are doing, and I think people need to remember as well that obviously it's been 25 years of the WNBA. We're only in year
7, 8.
7, 8, yeah, of the WBBL. So we've got some way to go, and it's only in the past couple of years that the WNBA have been doing what they've been doing. It's, you know, it does take that time to reach these kinds of levels. You know, there's no, I've said it a lot in a lot of my conversations where people have been like, oh, we need to do this. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, but it doesn't get fixed overnight.
No,
it just doesn't. It's a long game process, and one that there's so many people committed to and working for in the background. So
I think, yeah, I think the WBBL is, it had, I think both leagues, to be fair, there's a lot of players who can't make it into the MNBA and the WNBA. You know, there's only 450 or 500 spots in the MNBA, and then in the WNBA, you know, there's 144 spots. A lot of those men and women, but especially the women, because the men get paid ridiculous amounts of money. A lot of them, American women, come over to Europe to earn money during our normal season, because the WNBA plays in the summer. I think it's such a huge opportunity if we can get the women's teams to stump up some money, you know, to play in an English-speaking country. For a lot of these Americans who don't necessarily speak, you know, Russian or Slovenian or wherever they're going to earn decent money, you know, we're not going to be able to offer them the types of contracts that they'll earn in Russia. But, you know, there are huge opportunities for people who want to be a little bit more comfortable than they might if they were just living by themselves in a country where they don't speak the native language. So I think there is a huge opportunity for the WBBL, especially because, you know, I think that there are so many Americans that want to come over. But of course, in the men's BBL and the women's BBL, you have a sort of league rule of how many foreign-born players you can have. So that makes it a little bit more difficult to, I mean, God knows how the London Lions have done it the past few years, but they've managed to get some of the best Americans. You know, the fact that we had Liggins,
DeAndre Liggins,
DeAndre Liggins, yeah. The fact that you had him over and several other, and Byron Mullins at one point, and several other Americans and great Europeans and homegrown talent as well. You know, they put a great roster together and competed in Europe. But how many foreign-born players are British basketball teams allowed?
Oh God, you're testing the knowledge off the top of my head. I believe it's 5.
Okay.
I think.
It's my fault. I should have done my homework on that just to check beforehand. But yeah, I mean there is a limit to it. But I think one thing we've seen in recent years is seeing the types of players, you know, like Ashley Hamilton down in Plymouth last year. You know, we've seen GB basketball players coming back to the British basketball leagues respectively. So I think we are seeing that there is interest from the top British players to grow the professional leagues at home as well. What incentives can we do to sort of make sure that the best British basketball players are interested in playing in this country?
I think it's and this is a question that sort of keeps being asked. I think it's providing them with the opportunity. So a lot of the reason, part of the reason kids will go off to America is you get your college education as well. So I know a lot of our clubs offer have ties with various universities and offer that kind of player pathway there, where they, if they've got a sort of academy set up, you can go right through, and it's building that kind of infrastructure to give those opportunities. So if you've got a kid who's 16, 17, he's not really sure, he wants to play, he doesn't necessarily want to move to America, but he could, but actually he's being offered the chance to study here and have that all taken care of, and as well sort of like giving them a decent league to play in. That's the bottom line of it. And I think I've watched back on previous seasons and games and stuff. I think if you look at the quality of play, the quality of venues has improved. Again, it's slowly, but it's happening. It's building that infrastructure to sort of say, look, yeah, you could go to America, but chances are you're going to end up bouncing back over here at some point. So why not build your career here and be that star here? And I think that's part of it as well. We've not built any stars. So we've got great players, fantastic players in the GB squad, men's and women's, but they're not stars because we've not built them. To be. And again, that's part of why I'm here, I think, just to sort of start that cycle and start that journey and show kids that if that's what they want, if that if it is all of that, so fame, razzmatazz and everything that they want, why not give it to them here?
I mean, we had last year, I mean, it's a very specific case, not everybody is going to do this, but like Cameron Hildreth, son of Danny Hildreth, who's a former BBL player, he's 17, 18, and he's going away now to, he's incredible basketball player, and Stepton was playing National Basketball League and essentially stepped over to play with Surrey Scorchers, I think it was, and but he had already sort of decided he was going away. He got recruited to Wake Forest, one of the best basketball colleges in the States. There are going to be players that you are going to lose, but there's that. I think there's that middle tier, like you were saying, that you can build into homegrown stars.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing as well. I think it's about being not losing your dream, but being realistic about your dream. And it's very easy for me to say this now when I'm like way out of my teenage years and, I thought I could conquer the world and everything. But I think as well, it's having, it's the infrastructure. It's having people around who are like, okay, you're good. Like, you can make the national team, you can make a team, but realistically, you're not going to make it in the NBA. And I think that's got to be something that's, so you have to be really careful with these things, because obviously, as I say, you don't want to
crush these kids.
No, it's like, okay, you're great, but actually you're not that great. But no, it's about offering them realistic dreams. It makes me sound so horrible, but I think it's I've done it with my own kids. Like my daughter started swimming after watching the 2012 Olympics, and we worked out that like the 2020 Olympics would be the first ones that she could possibly compete in. She wasn't good enough. Like, she worked hard, she did it all, but she's transitioned now into being a swim teacher. So she's doing all of her swim teaching qualifications, and she's going to study sports coaching and everything. So it's about she never lost the dream of wanting to swim at the Olympics. Like, she got to swim in the Olympic pool in London, which was good enough for a bit. Now it's like, oh, she can be there in a different way. And I think it's the same with kids in any sport. It's, you've got to encourage them, but you also have to have people around who know when the right time is to say, actually, if you want to carry on doing this, if you want to do this as a job, and it is a job. I think Joe Kimlin was on the Huw Hopkins podcast, and he said this. It's like, it's a choice that you make, and he was so right with that. Like, it is a choice that you make, and if you want to make that choice, then there comes a point where you have to be realistic about why that choice is. So
if you haven't listened to the Hoops Fix podcast with Joey Kinwin, I mean, always listen to Hoops Fix podcast, because if you are into your British basketball, or you want to learn more about British basketball, there is no place better. And I'm saying that as someone who writes for Double Clutch, but he is British basketball through and through. Okay, so gonna dive into a couple of more quick fire about the league, about players. The women's London Lions.
Ooh.
Oh boy!
Oi!
What a roster!
Oh my goodness!
So I don't know where you stand on this, because, of course, London Lions, they've had new ownership in the past few years. They've and I believe they've. I mean, you're possibly, maybe I'm not allowed to ask you this on such a public setting, but the owners of the London Lions are interested in owning more of the league in some way, shape, or form. But is that something we're not allowed to talk about, or is that just rumours that we're going to say at the moment?
There's so many rumours in British basketball. I couldn't possibly comment on all of them.
Okay, I'll leave that there. So the owners of the London Lions, they see London, they see British basketball as this huge opportunity, like we've been talking about the whole time. So it's great to see this injection of cash. They've gone out, they've got Joey Leedham-Warner, who is the British basketball greatest of all time.
Absolute queen.
I have her jersey hanging just behind me there. She is the best player ever on the women's side. But they've also added God, my brain's fried now. Holly Winterburn from Leicester. And is Azania going down as well?
I think so.
I think she's going down as well. And that's already adding to an already great roster. So how do you cover that? Because of course they're going to be playing in the WBBL, and on the men's side they're going to be playing in the they're putting the same injection of cash into the men's side as well, but they're going away to Europe. How the hell does the BBL and the WBBL cover that? Because it's not your league, but it's your team.
It's not, and I think the view that we take for both of them is that we're really supportive of them. Like, it's not a usual thing for a British team to go and play in Europe for all kinds of reasons. So I think it's one of those where you kind of if you support another team, then you want to wish them well. Like, you want to see a British team do well, because if a British team does well, then it opens up the door for more British teams to go and do as well. So I think that it almost, because we don't do it that often, it almost becomes like I keep bringing it back to football, sorry, but that's the sport that I know best. But it becomes that kind of thing where you support your national team, don't you? So in a way, them going out into Europe is almost like being our that kind of equivalent. And I think, you know, we all want to see them do well. You know, as I say, to sort of like open that door to show, you know, the teams back home that it can be done. And also as an advert for what we've got here, like, you know, we've got a league that has these teams in that can go and do great things.
So I spoke to Vince Macaulay last year, and this was around the time when his men's team was going out to Europe to play in their games. In fact, I think they might have just got back from it. And he was saying that, you know, personally, he wants more British basketball league teams to be playing in Europe. You sit, you know, in these meetings with all the directors, and, you know, you have conversations with all these different teams. What appetite is there for other teams to go out, and how ambitious are they to do so?
I mean, the what I guess you'd term the usual suspects are ambitious for it. So Leicester, Newcastle, are certainly there for it. I think with the others, it's a case of that there's still an emphasis on getting everything settled and right at home first, because going to Europe it's a huge expense. It's you know, logistically it's a bit of a nightmare, especially at the moment. So the ambition is definitely there, from the teams you would expect it to be there for, and with the others it's a longer term ambition. I think, you know, there's certainly some cases where some teams are better placed than others to be thinking of that at this stage, and others are like, well, we want to be in that position to be able to think about it, so that's what they're working towards.
So is there a sense that if there's more, let's say we're 3-4 years down the line and we've got Leicester, we've got Newcastle, hell, we might even have Plymouth, maybe Gloucester, you know, I see that as more of a long-term project. The Gloucester team, they, you know, everything I've listened to Jay say about the development, they're not rushing into anything.
No.
But let's say you've got 4 teams out of the 10 or maybe 11 that we'll have in a few years' time, that are playing in Europe. Does the conversation and the promotion of that change? Like, do we need to start making that more of the coverage, so we can sort of say this is where you need to be, you know, sort of almost like from a comms perspective, put pressure on those teams to say, hey, you know, you should be shooting for more. You should be trying to raise your game.
Yeah, I think there's a balance to be had, and, you know, if we're talking sort of like longer down the line, and hopefully, you know, we've got more teams in the BBL anyway, and so it becomes a you know, less emphasis on these teams that are in Europe. I think, you know, because Europe is still such a new concept for us, really, in terms of having teams playing, you know, at this stage it's like, okay, yeah, this is exciting, and we'll see what happens. And the more success they have, the more we'll talk about it. So it is that, you're right, it does kind of feed that cycle there. And it would be the case that, you know, if we have more teams competing in Europe, then yes, we would do more coverage on it, because again, you want that context. You want to know who are they playing, you know, who are their star players. So there's a lot that feeds into it. So
okay, so we're nearly coming up to the full hour, so I'm conscious that you've got your kids, you've got your other duties that you need to do, and this is very much out of hours, and we do appreciate you taking the time.
No, it's absolutely fine.
So I want to hit a couple of quick fires before we go. Some things you can say, give me an answer. Some things you can say yes or no. Some things you can say no comment. I'll appreciate that. Touching WBBL first. Last year, Seven Oaks Suns won the championship. Lions won the playoffs. Lions won the trophy, and Leicester Riders won the cup. Any of those repeating? What do you see this year? Do you see it as a clean sweep from that London team, or are you thinking that, Newcastle have re-upped a few players? There's always going to be riders, even though they've lost a lot of players. Who do you see on the WBBL side of things having success next year?
I think there's going to be some battles. There are absolutely going to be some battles. You can never rule out Seven Oaks at all. That London team, though, it is so
stacked.
Like, I was just like looking at it, and I'm like, even looking at like the players that they brought back from last year. So Kennedy Leonard.
It's all the best players that they've brought back.
They brought back all the best ones, and I'm just like, Shanice back from Northern, I think, back for them as well. And I loved watching them play last year. Didn't
Shanice just play GB basketball for the 3-on-3?
Yeah.
These are all elite players.
But then I'm looking around, and I was Gloucester have recruited nicely as well. They've brought in.
They got Melita,
who
she'll back down from nobody.
I love like her energy and like her spark. She's so much fun. I just want to see her play. But then you look at Seven Oaks, and they've brought back like Cat Carr and everyone, and it's just like but then look at Newcastle, and it's just like there's so many.
Like Newcastle brought
so
in
many good players.
Newcastle at the start of last year, they lost a bunch of players, and they ended up finishing 7th or something, and then ended up nearly winning the playoffs. Causing all these upsets to the likes of Leicester Riders. And they beat the London Lions in the actual final few weeks. But they could. I don't think they could get it done in the final hurdles. But it was an incredible run. But they had a great team right at the end of the season, and they've added so many players to it. They've brought a couple of people back from playing in America, playing college basketball in America, and have re-upped some of their best players. So I think they're going to be a challenge to the Lions, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions won everything.
I can't. Yeah, I'm always wary of saying it because obviously you never know what's going to happen. But Lions have got to be favourites. Just purely on paper. There, you look at that, you're like, how is anyone going to stop that? But I know that that's going to fire every single player
they're going to be
up, and they are going to be the target, and that it's going to produce some really, really great games.
It's going to have like I don't know how much you follow the men's NBA, but it's like Golden State a few years ago. Once they won that 73-9 season, and once they won the 2 back-to-back championships after that, every single time they were faced with every team's best go. Okay, so jumping over to the men's side, the MBBL, which by the way I think should be part of the marketing now. I think it needs to be WBBL and MBBL.
I don't necessarily disagree.
Okay. We're going to be working on that, you and me behind the scenes. So we've got the league was won last year by the Riders. Newcastle Eagles won the playoffs and the cup, and the London Lions won the trophy. The Lions are building back up again, but they've lost Liggins from last year. They've lost 1 or 2 other players. Byron Mullins left halfway through the year. Plymouth Patriot. I nearly said Raiders then. Plymouth Patriots. I'm not even sure what their full roster looks like yet. They've only released about 3 players that they've brought in, and a couple of top Brits in there, which is great to see. And there's a lot of signings still to be done. But are there any teams that you're thinking could challenge the Lions or the Riders? The Riders, and of course, Newcastle Eagles are always up there.
Do you know what? I'm interested to see Cheshire this season.
Okay.
I think they've done some really interesting and savvy recruiting out there. So I'm going to be interested to see them. Manchester are making big statements. They signed Dan Clark.
I completely forgot about Dan Clark.
Yeah, which was like a huge
God,
statement to make, and it was like, okay, that's a bit of intent there. There's a lot where I think for me, I'm most interested in seeing what Cheshire do, to be honest. So outside of the usual suspects.
So for those listening, they signed a couple of top players. So Teddy Okioriafor, who is a GB basketball player, and honestly, in the Eurobasket qualifiers, he was like one of their best players, one of GB basketball's best players in that stretch. Was an absolute Iron Man. I think he played all the games. Jules Dangakodo, who has been great at home and abroad the past few years. And then you've also got for the Manchester Giants, not only Dan Clark, but you've got Jamal Anderson, who's played a few seasons in Leicester and went up to Manchester. But then, of course, with the Riders, you've got Gino Crandall coming back, and he was ridiculous last year. He added such
absolutely insane
brilliance to the team last year.
I was lucky enough to spend some time with him, and such a nice person as well. Like, really humble, really just a really great guy. But yeah, I mean the way he kind of like burst in, I was just like, hi.
I think
I was like, oh,
if a basketball fan in the UK has seen one highlight of the British Basketball League, it will have been Gino Crandall from last year.
Yeah, 100%.
The most exciting passer we've got in the league, possibly. Another quick fire before I let you go. I've heard rumours there may be a magazine. I'm guessing the eyebrows mean no comment for those who are listening back.
I mean, I've always, you know me, Huw, I've got ideas all over the place. So I mean, there's a whole heap of things that I want us to be able to do, and some will happen sooner than others. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled.
All right then, keep your eyes peeled, Double Clutch listeners and watchers and readers. Selina, that's been absolutely wonderful. We haven't hit some of the usual things that we normally do, but I think having yourself on, wanted to get as much information out of you as possible, because the British Basketball League and the Men's British Basketball League and the Women's British Basketball League last year, despite the fact that you didn't have any fans in the arena, you launched the BBL player, you got games back on Sky Sports, and there was such a forgive the pun, but buzz around the so Buzz is the production company that works with the BBL. There was such a buzz around the BBL and the WBBL last year that I think getting fans back, getting bums back in seats, getting fans back watching on all these different platforms, now that some of the kinks have been worked out, hopefully this season is going to be one that everybody needs to tune in for.
I will say, like, having fans back in is going to make such a difference. And the players I speak to, the team owners I speak to, they literally cannot wait. Like this is sort of like what's really really pushing them, and they're so hyped, like just to put on a show for everyone. So yeah, we'll be sharing all the ways that you can watch and follow in the next couple of weeks. There's still a few things that need to be sorted, and sharing where you can buy tickets to actually go and watch in person, because it is exciting. It is it's a thing, and it is just to be there again. It's going to be great.
So for people's reference, basically all of the sort of week-to-week, day-to-day games, you tend to go to the local team for tickets. That's correct. But for the bigger events, your cups, your playoffs, your trophies, that sort of thing, how are people getting tickets for those bigger competitions?
So tickets are on sale for all of them now. I think we had last ones just go on general sale just recently. So if you go to any of your main ticket providers, they will be there. Or if you go to our website and click on tickets, and it will give you all the information you need there.
Excellent. And Selina, thank you very much. We didn't one of the quick fire questions that I didn't get into is your genius and your sort of brilliance as on the television show Only Connect. For those that haven't seen Selina's appearance, sort of opposite Victoria Coren Mitchell, and essentially showing that she is one of the brains of Britain beyond being one of the best comms people in British basketball. Go check out that on BBC iPlayer. I'm sure it's still on there somewhere.
I'm not sure if it's because we're in New Season. It's all on YouTube if you want to watch it. Season 16.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, don't. It was hilarious, but yeah. Thank you. Very kind of you to say.
No problem. Selina, thank you. Kirk, big shout out to you for producing, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. I saw WBBL Review checking in, as well as Matt from Nets Fans UK, and a couple of others dropped in. Mr. Beanie Beans as well there. Really thanks to everybody for tuning in live, and thanks to you if you're listening back afterwards. And please make sure you sign up to subscribe to us on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/DoubleClutchUK, or make sure you join us in our Discord community, guys, and get the conversation going in there as well. It is Discord. I've lost the link now. God, it was going so professionally as well, wasn't it, Selina? It's discord.me/DoubleClutch, and make sure you're following us on all social medias at DoubleClutchUK. Selina, thank you once again. Kirk, thanks for producing, and thanks to Matt for chopping up the audio afterwards. But for now, peace.
Say again what you're talking about.